right, hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing right now on Thursday afternoon. We've got a unique, something we've not done before, type of podcast here today, which I'll explain in a minute. First off, joining me from Sacramento, California, Anthony Slater. What's up, Slater?
I'm doing great. You know, you guys were just complimenting my backyard prior to this, so I'm feeling
You're really
good.
doing great because you're a Cleveland Guardians fan, and moments ago they just completed a sweep of the Tigers.
This is a very Cleveland podcast because Brian has obviously Cleveland ties, and you're about to get to our guest, Cleveland ties.
And actually, I am in Akron right now, so I just got to Northeast Ohio. Joining us is the president of Verus basketball and the representative of Jonathan Kuminga, who's been in the news a little bit lately, Aaron Turner. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on Hoop Collective.
Oh, thanks for having me. Glad we get to wrap.
Yeah, and you're joining us from Cleveland, which is where you live and where you're from. I'm here in Ohio. It's a beautiful day. We were just talking before he came on. You went to Orange High School, which is on the east side of Cleveland. And you played against LeBron James in high school and dominated him from what I think that's what you just said. I'll let you clear the record, but I think that's what you said.
Far from that, but I did get he got one foul that when he played against us, it was against me. So I have that.
So he fouled you.
Fouled me.
Those are stats now, right? You can find in the box score, like Drew, how many personal fouls drawn.
Oh, there, it's in the archives. He just couldn't move his feet quick enough. So
yeah, that was on his scouting report.
He's the only high schooler I've ever seen get a foul called, be able to run down to the other side of the floor, put his hands up in the air, and it was like, oh, no tech, don't worry about it, come back down.
I've seen more than one high school kid yet. Okay, but before we get into the business here, what I like is this great story. There was one game, LeBron's senior year. It was his senior year, right?
Yeah.
So you're a year younger than LeBron.
You were class. He was depends what junior year we played him at the Canton Fieldhouse game we were talking about.
Okay, so your junior year, his senior year, right? Because you're a year younger.
That was his junior year. It was right when that Sports Illustrated cover came out.
Oh, right. Okay, so the Sports Illustrated cover comes out. Here's the thing: the Lakers have an off night in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. They are the defending champions. They are in there. I think that year maybe they won their third of three-peats. So they are the two-time champs. They have an off night in Cleveland. LeBron is playing St. Vincent St. Mary. Go Irish. Yep. Our football team hasn't scored a point yet. Well, it's like 4 weeks into the season. I'm just going to bring that up. I'm sorry to say. They're playing in Canton. Canton from Cleveland is what, Aaron? An hour. Yeah. Okay, and it's February, right?
Mm-hmm.
So middle of the winter, the Lakers have an off night. Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant. How many nights do you think that they spent together on off nights? Do you think that they hung out a lot on off nights during that time? Okay, they get in a car, drive an hour to Canton to watch you guys play. Kobe and Shaq show up at your game. Like you're playing against LeBron, who's on the cover of Sports Illustrated like a couple of days before, and Kobe and Shaq at their height, well, maybe not Kobe's height, but certainly Shaq's height, show up at your game. What the heck was that? What were you guys saying on the bench when that went down?
I remember that. It was our coach it was during a timeout. He was drawing up nobody could hear him. I mean, you couldn't even hear it. It was the loudest I'd ever seen an arena. And the Canton Fieldhouse where it was the way it's built, 5,000 people packed in. I mean, you couldn't hear anything that anybody was saying for the next 30 seconds.
Because they were like fashionably late, like they came in like
yeah, and it was so loud, and it was in a timeout, and no one had any idea what our coach was saying.
That is amazing. I mean, that's kind of freaky, man, right? I mean, just to see Shaq in person, you never get used to it.
Yeah, no, it's all very wild.
All right, well, the reason you're here is because you're in the middle of the most intense negotiation going on in the NBA right now. And I will tell you, this is my 23rd year covering the NBA. I can't speak with, confidence about the 90s, but in my 23 years covering the NBA, this might be the toughest summer for a restricted free agent that we've seen. And if it's not the toughest, it's right up there. It's not worth arguing over. There was only a couple of teams with cap space. None of them were interested in giving out offer sheets. Right. I think there was only one offer sheet that's been given out this summer, and it was like given out by the Hawks for like a couple $1 million. It was not a material offer sheet. And for the 3 or 4 big name restricted free agents, it was like kind of like a nuclear summer. Like it was going to be, which you knew, right? Like going in, it wasn't like this is a surprise. You knew. So you were facing a tough situation, and you're representing a player in Jonathan Kuminga who is still ascendant in his career. He is, I think you would agree, has not achieved his max that he can achieve. So even if he's unrestricted, or even if there's a ton of cap space out there and you're negotiating with 4 or 5 different offer sheets, negotiating for a player like this is challenging because you're betting on him rising up. So we have a situation that I will say, you don't have to use the words, I'll say it. It's one of the most challenging markets for restricted free agent, with arguably the most Josh Giddey was kind of in the same boat, same sort of challenge. But he had been at least a more established starter this last season. So you have gone through this, what I would assume is a pretty stressful summer, and it's still going on. And so how did we get here to where we're on September 18th and you still in this stalemate with JK and the Warriors?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's well said. And it has been a brutal year for any restricted free agent, any even free agent in general outside above the mid-level. It's the high-end free agent market this year is basically, it doesn't exist. It's not open. So that challenge has been there. We knew it was going to be there. But we're really in this place, now with less than 2 weeks away from training camp. And I know Slater's been tracking this the whole summer and before even, July 1st, when things could start talking with the Warriors and whatnot. This is a interesting pattern, and I've had a lot of people talk to me about the other restricted free agents or what's going on, and each one kind of has its own unique set of circumstances, and this one is very unique. The combination of how they finished, Jimmy coming in, Steve's, having a hard time figuring out the combinations that would work with JK on the floor. Steve openly stating that many times as he, and also after the season. And then JK's developmental arc and what he's looking to do and, where he wants to go. All these things have made this very, very challenging outside of, of course, no free agent market, but us finding a deal with them. So that's why we are sitting here now 2 weeks away. And like I was laughing, before we got on, Jonathan's in Cleveland with me working out. That's not normally how my September goes. I'm normally relaxing, taking my
Everybody
kids.
knows that Cleveland is the hub of the NBA offseason. I mean, that's why we're here. That's why I'm here.
Everybody comes here. That's right. No, it's but that's kind of our we had scripted. Normally he's, going to be in Miami and then he goes back to the Bay or wherever team he was going to be. And we kind of just threw this together last minute and said, hey, let's give him, a good infrastructure in Cleveland. So he's got everything he needs here and he's working, and, we're doing the best we can to simulate games and keep him, ready to go and in shape. Even if that means, he doesn't report till October 1st, we want him to be ready and in great shape.
So there's so much pretext to this, obviously, but speeding it up for the moment. We know the offers. We've reported the offers that are sitting there on the table: 3 for 75 with the team option, 3 for 54, I believe, no options, and then the one that's been sitting there most of the summer, 2 for 45, 1-1 team option on it. I am of the belief at this point that y'all are not that misaligned on per year value. Obviously you went on the record with me a couple days ago talking about if that team option in the 3-year deal, and you could even speak to it, maybe even in the 2-year deal, if that team option was a player option, it's not only signed, but you have a bought in Jonathan Kuminga at that point. Why is the player option the final hurdle here, and why is it being I guess negotiated as strictly right now between the two sides?
So I'm going to kind of go back to last summer a little bit, because I think if we're going to, we could go back to the first year with JK. We could go back to the, with the JK Steve dynamic. We could go to year 2 where, in March, end of February, March up to early April, JK was a big, big part of them getting into the playoffs. Even in that year they played the Kings when Wiggins was dealing with some personal issues and whatnot, and he averaged 13 and a half a game, and really was really efficient. I think his true shooting percentage was 64% during that time period. And then, kind of falling back again during the playoffs as the rotation tightened, and then going into year 3 where he had, 20, 25 game span where he was phenomenal. He was, Draymond was saying, this guy's never going to not be an all-star. Enjoy your last all-star break, JK, because you're going to be an all-star the rest of your career. So there's a lot of things leading up to last summer where, do we get something done? And I know there's been a lot of conversations and, about what happened last summer. And I'm bringing this all to get to your point, Slater, of like why we are now the player option, all that. But, the Warriors, they didn't want to do a deal last summer. I know people have reported, did you guys turn down 5 years, 150? We would have taken that. We would have had to take that if it was on the table, but it wasn't on the table. And no one was mad about it. It was the Warriors wanted to maintain flexibility. Had they given JK pretty much anything above 20 million, they would have, even above the mid-level, to be honest with you, they would have not been able to move him. That poison pill provision that would have said, hey, if you trade him out, that team has to take him back at his, 25, 26 salary they would have no chance to get a Kevin Durant like they almost did last year with JK being the centerpiece. So that was the choice they made. They didn't want to do a deal. Again, no one was upset about that, but, we went into this year or last season, hoping that there would be kind of more of an opportunity to figure this all out. And, JK had moments where he was given a long runway, end of December, early January, and really flourished. But there was a lot of ups, downs, ups, downs, up, downs. And that's kind of been the theme, in year 4. There was one moment where it was like, hey, we're passing the torch to JK. This is his time. He was coming off a big 33-point game against
Draymond Green accepted a bench role, if people might remember, for a few games, and they basically kind of announced, if he's up next, we got to see it. That was during that time.
And it lasted a few games, and then he was back coming off the bench, and it was very frustrating. So, and in that month in December, he averaged 21 points, 6 rebounds. He was really, really good. So, then unfortunately, the Steve JK dynamic was really flourishing, and JK gets this really bad, ankle sprain, which was unfortunate because, like I said, that was to me the high point of Steve and JK. They were really doing well. Everything was vibing. And then again, he gets hurt. Jimmy comes in. Jimmy was phenomenal, and we get to this point where, we're now in this weird spot where, obviously they committed a bunch of money to Jimmy. Everyone understands that. But now it's like, where do we go? And it's funny. I always say this about the NBA with my guys, like, you don't get too high, you don't get too low, because when something happens, you don't know necessarily if it's good or bad. But when, Steph got hurt against Minnesota, and JK filled in, he had a great series. I thought he played really well, and I was happy for him in the sense that, getting DNPs and stuff that was going on in Houston, he got to show that. But it probably made all this a lot harder, even because Joe was sitting courtside watching JK,
Joe Lake of the Warriors owner. Just in case it's your guy's life, but I just have to fill in.
Yes.
Fill in. People are gonna figure out who Jimmy is, but just to be clear.
Right. So Joe Lake, he's sidelined, and, he's watching JK, shred essentially one of the best defenses in the league, after All-Star break last year. And I think he finished averaging 21 a game that series, 54 from the field, 42 from 3. And so it's like, okay, we get to the summer. This guy's clearly got some talent. Where are we going with this? And, that's why we're in this spot of this confusion of, where do we go from here? And I think that's kind of moved this summer. And so when you get to the player option, the way we look at it and have approached this from day one, there's been a lot of stuff I've heard. JK doesn't want to be with the Warriors. Like, we can unpack that a little bit. I think JK is the hardest worker I've ever represented. From a 1 to 10, his work ethic is an 11. He loves it. He's competitive. I've kind of said this about him. His biggest flaw sometimes is he wants it too much. So, he's gotten a chance to hear from other teams. Sacramento, he spent some time with them, got to meet Scott Perry, Doug Christie, the Suns, and what they've offered him. And there's been other teams too who, maybe planting seeds for 26, 27, but saying, hey, we want you to be you. We don't want you to change anything. We want to put the ball in your hands. We want to give you a huge opportunity to play. So I don't think it's more about not being on, not wanting to be on the Warriors, because the Warriors, if having repped guys on all different teams. It is first class as you get. I mean, everything there is awesome, from the facility, how they treat the guys. It's like amazing. But these other places are offering them opportunities to start games, finish games, right? Know your role. We don't want you to change anything. We want you to continue to develop, spread your wings. So with Golden State, it's not a secret, right? JK's, and Slater, you made this point the other day on ESPN, no guarantee he starts any games. He may, but we don't know. Finishing games, night to night, who knows? It depends if Steve has a combination he likes and it's working. Maybe he sticks with it. Maybe he doesn't. You're going to have to not have the ball as much. You're going to have to stay away from developing certain parts of your game or wanting to lean into certain part of your game, especially shooting any type of mid-range jump shots, which is something JK does work on. But in the Golden State offense and the role he's in, that's not going to be a big shot that he's really going to be able to take much. So part of it is you're going to have to sacrifice your game from where other people would allow you to do for now his 5th year. In addition to that, he might get traded. He knows that. We know that. They know that. I mean, we went in exploring all options. Myself, Mike Dunleavy, can we find a sign and trade that works? Can we duck around this base compensation rule that only allows them to bring back half the money? But he knows it's a real thing. You may get traded. And I really can't find where I've seen a free agent at, 20 million above where you sign and go, I know I'm going to get very good chance.
I 100% agree. It's very rare. It's very
right.
rare.
And I've said that. So he doesn't want to move 3 months from now. He doesn't want to take his, pack up his life and move. So there's the dynamic of sacrificing your game. There's the dynamic of moving halfway through the season.
And mid-season trades for players, Brian, you've been around, are a lot different than off-season moving teams. When you have to pack up in the middle of the season, the players want to know, I'm going to be here. It's why the trade deadline, everyone, is so antsy about. But anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's so we look at, the sacrifice of his game. We look at that. And then, these other teams, Matt Ishbia, who's openly, he would give JK whatever he could if he had the cap space. He's trying to figure it out through a sign and trade. And JK's heard these conversations, so he knows what's out there. He knows the deals, the guaranteed money, the opportunity. So when you factor all that in, the thought is, okay, if we're coming back here and it's win now, this is Steph's probably last window to win. Help us out on the back end of the deal, because we're going to be sacrificing what we just spoke about. And that's why the player option has been so pushed by us. And I give credit to JK. There's a lot said about him, that he only cares about himself or scoring. It couldn't be farther from the truth. JK's not a guy that says, oh man, I scored 30, 25. He just wants to be a part of what's going on. He does, of course, want to have the ball more. He wants the ball in his hands, but he's not a guy that doesn't want to win. He wants to be part of that. And I, before we started this negotiation, I came to him and I've been educating him through this process, and he's learned a lot through this process. And I said to him, hey, look at the Warriors cap sheet. All right. They have some second apron issues. It's probably unreasonable to ask them to go over that. Even though we like Jalen Green's deal, we see Jalen Johnson's deal, 2 guys that we think were, hey, I'm not going to say who's better, but okay, we see these deals. We like those numbers, but it's probably unrealistic here. And how are they going to get the team better and bring you back? And we knew about the Al Horford, had heard about what was going on with Al. And to JK's credit, he said, look, I'll sacrifice for that. Give Al the taxpayer mid-level, comes in, it helps. We've never had a stretch 5 like that. Steve has said openly, having a stretch 5, some of the combinations that might loosen up the floor for the Jimmy, Draymond, JK dynamic. Maybe Al can really help with that. So, he was all on board with that. But because we were going to, take a number on the front that, we thought was maybe at a lower level than some of Jalen Green, Jalen Johnson, some of these other guys, to help the team win in this window, then let us have the player option on the back end, and if JK, it's not that he wouldn't stay in Golden State, but if he wants to stay, he'd have the ability to stay. And if he doesn't, then okay, he's nothing's forcing him back to the table. So that's really, Slater, where the player option became important, because the way I look at it in a lot of deals, and I think this is a lot of businesses, it's, if you're going to take less on the front end, you get a little more on the back end. If you want more, on the front end, you're going to get less on the back end. And in this situation, to help the team win, along with those kind of sacrifices we spoke about, we felt like that solution, and JK feels like it is fair. We think it's fair. We think it's the right thing to do. And listen, I get it's the NBA, and there's business and there's negotiations, and it's, a lot of people say, you're worth what you can negotiate. Okay. And I know that because I've been in a bunch of different negotiations, but in this situation, and, people have said, he has no market. There's no market. It's not that he doesn't have a market. The market is closed. Okay. It's closed. So if I have a Lamborghini and I'm in a bind and I say to somebody, hey man, it's Saturday night. I need some cash for whatever reason. I wouldn't be in this situation, but I need some cash. It's a 911. I got to help my family, whatever that is. Monday morning, you can sell this car for $175,000. Can you give me that? And, maybe this is a friend of mine or somebody that I do business with. Give me 175, give me even 160. Go sell it for 175 on Monday. You'll get your return right out of it. They say, nah, we'll give you 60 grand. Like, man, you could sell it Monday morning. The Lamborghini dealership will be open. And they say, nah, what do you want to do? Do you want to handle your emergency or not? This is what we're offering you. So the whole theory of like JK doesn't have a market, especially if the teams he's talking to, his market's closed. It's not open this year. To your point, Brian, it's the worst RFA market we've seen. There is no market. So that doesn't mean that a deal is fair or not fair to him just because the market is closed. And I've said from the beginning to Mike and the Warriors, you're not selling the basketball here. Steve, and I like Steve, I've known Steve Kerr since I was 5 years old. That's a whole nother story. It's pretty wild, full circle thing back when he played with the Cavs, Brian. But, him and JK have had an up and down relationship. JK has flourished under Steve at times. I don't really buy the whole thing that JK can't play for Steve. I always say, when JK was scoring 25, 26 a game, who was on the sidelines? It was Steve. He can play under Steve. I know Steve at some points, and he made this very clear at the end of the season. I like a different type of player arc. He'll say he wants JK to be more like Aaron Gordon, Sean Marion. I don't agree with Steve on that side. I don't think JK is very much like those guys. I think they're different player arcs. I think JK's, just different. I'm not saying who's better, who's not, but Aaron Gordon's more playing off the ball. He's not as much of a point of attack defender. It's just that they're different. So Steve made it clear though, right? With Draymond, with Jimmy, the shooting, lack of shooting, it doesn't really, fit. So again, if he's going to come back to this, Mike, these other teams, right? Hey, JK, head coach is saying, we believe in you. We're excited to have you. We want you to be here and play your game. Sell the deal structure, because that's the Warriors' incumbent advantage, right? Over everyone else. They can sell the best deal. And that's where I thought we could bridge the gap.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the qualifying offer and the reasons why you guys are, saying you might take it at this point. Yeah. They would argue, particularly on the front end of the deal, they are offering more than theoretical Suns and Kings offers. And if you decide the team option deal is a no-go in the next, 12 days, the one piece of leverage you clearly have in this negotiations in a restricted free agent market is taking the qualifying offer. Now that is 1 year, $7.9 million. It does come with unrestricted free agency. It does come with a no trade clause. But it also comes with, if you did the 1-and-1 that's been on the table all summer, like 13, 14 less million for Jonathan Kuminga next season. If you refuse the 2+1 with the team option, that's, whatever, do the math for me, somebody here. But, we're talking about whatever it is, like 40 something guaranteed compared to 8. What is your view of the qualifying offer, and why are you willing to take it, or are you?
Yeah, well, you brought up a good point, sir. I pitched the player option deal, right, to give him flexibility. We haven't said no to a team option. Our theory and feeling is, though, if you want a team option and you want to get rid of his no trade clause, which the QO inherently has, okay, that's a different price. You got to pay for that. Okay, you gotta put more on top if you want both. I've also pitched, just before we get to taking the QO, hey, fine, we'll do the 1+1 scenario, but let him keep his no trade clause, which would put us in the same position we are right now, but with no base compensation rule. So JK at least has a seat at the table to figure out where he wants to go next. And you guys would have the back end of the deal, but they won't do that. So they've really tried to make a deal where they have no risk and are taking, to me, advantage of the situation of the market being closed. So JK, and why is the QO a real thing? If you know Jonathan, he has a lot of self-belief. He's very confident. I tell people all the time, and I tell the Warriors, look who you're dealing with. I don't know many people that could be getting DNPs in the playoffs, not play for 3 weeks, come into game 2 against Minnesota, make his first 9 shots, then go out the next night and have 30 points and 6 rebounds at his age, 20 some the next night, 29 to finish the series, and have that level of confidence and self-belief.
Yeah. And I would say, like, and Brian, it's like there's a very wide range of belief around the league of how good Jonathan Kuminga can be. We may on this call have varying degrees. There's certainly, disproportionate, views within the organization, the Warriors organization, of how good he can be. But it is Aaron Turner and Jonathan Kuminga believe he's going to be a multi-time All-Star. He has that type of talent, and that is who the Warriors are negotiating with. A side that believes, once he does get control, once he does get a runway, that's where the takeoff is going.
Yeah, no, he believes that. I believe that. Our group around him believes that. We believe he's more about the right things than I think a lot of people think. I think some of the times people say, well, he took this shot or that shot that he shouldn't take. And, playing with Steph, you have to really understand how to play with Steph. And it's something that's why I see a lot of vets really flourish in the role of understanding how to look for Steph first. And sometimes JK's 22. He's like, I can get downhill right away, and he won't. So he has a lot of self-belief, and
Can I keep the question simple though? Like, he's willing to leave this much money on the table?
Yeah, my bad. Sorry. Getting back, I was framing to why the QO.
Yeah, well, that's the big thing here, because we're talking straight dollars and cents here. They are offering a ton of money.
Yeah.
And he is saying, maybe I will not take that money.
Right. So when we look at these deals, one of the things he'll say to me is like, is this deal, fair to me? And based on what we discussed, is it fair? No, I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's right. I think that it's taking advantage of the circumstances, which for JK, that's not what he's looking for. So when you say, will he take the QO? He will take the QO. But if he's treated fairly, and in our mind, that's flipping, like I said, the TO to the PO, he's back, and then we don't have to talk about the QO. But the QO is real. It's something that, if JK wants to take, it does have upside, right? We've talked about that. You don't get, you're not getting traded. You're going to have unrestricted free agency in a year that, even if people want to say, well, Aaron, there's not going to be 10 or 12 teams. Fine. There'll be 6 teams with cap space for the clear cut, under 35, the top wing on the market. So there's a lot of upside if, he wants to pick where he wants to go, and the opportunity to be an unrestricted free agent in a way better market. So the QO is real, for sure. There's no, it's being considered completely. It's being talked about. We've, as you reported, Slater, we've gotten a disability policy out for him that would, hedge out some of the injury risk. But it's not something, anybody wants to do.
Neither side. I mean, Brian, this right clearly. We wouldn't be here on September 18th on this podcast discussing this if either side wanted that to be the outcome.
Yeah, I would just say, like, first off, Aaron, I really appreciate you coming on, because this is really a one-off situation I can't remember, where you're in the middle of the negotiation, you're willing to bring the fans in to hear this, because I'm telling you, there's incredible amount of interest in Jonathan's free agency, more than I can remember, and probably because he's on the Warriors, and partially because it's September and he's the number 1 free agent on the market. There's this
and the Warriors have signed nobody officially at this point.
Well, that's true. I do think I do see a lot of people, like, why aren't the Warriors signing anybody? They're going to sign a bunch of guys. But I would just say that, having been around for a while, I just seen a lot of stuff. I've seen restricted free agencies go into December. I've seen teams have multiple restricted free agents that don't come to training camp. Okay. I've seen restricted free agencies end at the end of training camp. I've seen them end in the season. From my viewpoint, Aaron, and I totally get that you are absolutely eyeball deep in this. And because the thing about an agent does, like, a lot of stuff that people don't see. Your job is a lot deeper and more encompassing than just negotiating the contract, but your work product to the world is the contract. And not only that, everybody sees it. If you're a development coach, maybe you did a great job, or maybe you did a bad job, but nobody can necessarily see it. Maybe the player gets better, and that doesn't really reflect your work. In the case of an agent or representative, I'm trying to work out, not saying agent, I've been told that's bad. your work product is what the contract is. So it's my way of saying I totally understand you are eyeball deep in fighting it. From my perspective, as a jaded guy who's been around for 20 years and seen a lot of this stuff, I feel like everybody is acting as normal here. I think the Warriors are trying to use their perceived leverage. They know that you can't get an offer sheet, so they're trying to squeeze you. I think if you were their general manager and the situation was reversed, well, I won't put that on you. I would just say if I was a general manager and the situation was reversed, I probably would be trying to squeeze you too. In your situation, Aaron, what you've done is you've tried to flop the tables on that. Number one, you got offers from other teams. Okay, the Warriors don't seem interested in the sign and trades. That's cost of doing business. You can get sign and trade offers. If you can't do the deal, you can't do the deal. But based on Anthony and Shams Charania's reporting from this week, you've gotten them to increase their offer. Their offers now are better than they were a month ago. Mm-hmm. You've done your job. Okay, job's not finished. Kobe Bryant, what have you. They're coming up with their offers. They're offering more years and more money. They're dealing with the second apron. But I do think that unless I'm wrong, you correct me if I'm wrong, they're offering more than either the Suns or the Kings have offered, not because they don't want to offer more, but because they're limited in what they can do in the sign and trade. So they can look you in the eye and say, we're making a best offer. And they can look you in the eye and say, hey, we don't want to do a player option because we didn't give one to Steph. We didn't give one to Jimmy Butler last year. They did give one to Draymond. But Draymond, and correct me if I'm wrong, Slater, on this, Draymond did take a pay cut as part of this contract.
Yeah. He ripped up his player option, signed at a lower number.
And I know just because
Andrew Wiggins got a player option.
Oh,
too.
He did. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, they can look you in the eye and say, that's why we didn't do it. If Steph doesn't get one, you don't be able to get one. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying what they could say. And, I think everybody's doing their job here, Aaron. And I think you're working really hard and the Warriors are working really hard. And in the end, I think it's interesting because of the possible trade. I think the Warriors, they wouldn't say it publicly, but I do think they're negotiating a contract, not just to save Joe Lacob money and not just to protect their apron. I mean, both of those are true. I think they're working hard because they want to get a contract that's as tradable as possible. And I don't think they necessarily admit that, but I think all these things are in play.
No, it's been admitted. JK's a big boy. We know what it is. And I think, I have a lot of optimism if he comes back. And to Slater's point, people are worried about the buy-in, right? And I think what does buy-in mean in this situation?
Yeah, they're worried that if he takes a qualifying offer, he's going to be checked out.
Or even, by the way, even if it takes a team, a deal that isn't the deal he likes, I think there's curiosity, especially again with, as I reported the other day, is he going to be happy? And if he's not happy, what does that mean on the floor and in the locker room?
Yeah, I think that's and from the beginning, I've said this. I mean, every RFA situation is different, but the Warriors are trying to win. And anybody who's watched the Warriors closely understands JK is a massive piece. I understand he didn't play in the play-in game in the Houston series, but in an 82 regular season, 82 game season, 12 of their first 17 are back-to-backs. They're older. That's just the truth, right? JK is vital. He was their third leading scorer last year. And him coming back, and I believe this is, the Thunder have set the bar, right? They are very close-knit as a team. For him to come back and, be all about, feeling good, I think that's very, very important. And so when you look at, where this has gone, Brian, I would say that, to me, again, I agree. The Warriors are doing what they, can based on the rules and whatnot. But if JK is very important to your team, I would need a guy, bought in. And I think the problem for them, if JK doesn't feel good about the deals being offered, is if he comes back on the QO, and a lot of times you talk to GMs around the league, when you're in win now mode, like the Warriors are, right, and trying to maximize the rest of Steph and Draymond's window and Jimmy and his, get him his first ring, you need everybody bought in. And a lot of times you'll hear people say, I don't really want a guy who hasn't gotten paid yet or gotten a bigger contract, even if it's an older guy, on an expiring deal in a year that you're trying to win everything, because naturally, where's that person's mind going to? So do I think, if JK came back on the QO, would he be excited to play? Yeah, he's itching to play right now. But the reality is the number one thing for JK and his family, and if I'm watching, advising, is he's got to get to the summer of 26, 27 healthy. That is the most important thing. So, if JK wasn't that important to the Warriors, fine. And I, Slater and I talk about this. I'll see, a fan base or some of the people say, "Why this guy's holding everything up? Like, get rid of him." I don't like this guy. Fine, that's my point. If you don't like him, that's fine, but let him go. But if you're not going to let him go or renounce him, then you have your full mid-level. You can sign and trade. You can, move and shake. But if he is important and he does matter, you got to get him to a place where he feels good about the deal. And the QO for JK has risk, but it has upside in its own way. Not necessarily, it'll take him a couple years to make back maybe the money he would lose. But again, he believes in himself. I believe in him. We've looked at his 10-year forecast. We've put it in Excel spreadsheets. We've done all that. But he's also educated himself on what the QO means to the other side, to the Warriors. And we've talked through this many times. And he believes the Warriors need him. He thinks his teammates do. I do. I think everybody who's really watched the Warriors thinks he's a very important piece. Now, would we get deeper in the season in a playoff series? Would Steve maybe move him out of the rotation? Sure, that's possible. We've seen it before. But to get through 82 games, to manage minutes, back-to-backs, he's very important. And whether it's with him or his number, he is really the most important piece for the Warriors, because they need him to take a jump and ascend, especially to play against the Thunder. And one of my people, when I talk to people around the league, I say, if you really want to study JK and learn about JK, just watch him against the Thunder. That'll tell you everything you need to know, how he plays against them, how he steps up against them. So they need that. And if it's not him, they need his number. They need to move him to bring somebody else to help him. Go look at their cap sheet and go see the movable salaries they have if Jonathan Kuminga is on a QO.
This is such a reality of the new era that you can talk so openly about, because, like, let's be honest, this is what the Warriors did with D'Angelo Russell. They signed D'Angelo Russell in the Durant sign and trade so that they could have a piece to trade later, which they did for Wiggins, which ended up being a big move.
Oh, by the way, they didn't just trade him for Andrew Wiggins. They traded him for the draft pick that became Jonathan Kuminga.
Yes. And so anyway, I just say this. We'll wrap up now, but I will say that it's easy for me to say this because I got no skin in the game, Aaron. But I say at the end of this, the Warriors are going to have a contract that they can trade. It may not be as tradable as they dreamed of. Jonathan is going to be protected financially, and you're going to have made a major stride from where they were on July 1st to where they are in September, whatever. And I think it's all going to work out. But again, it's easy for me to say that.
The only thing I would ask you, Brian, is do you think JK on a 2+1 in that number range is not a tradable contract?
And the +1, you're talking player, not team.
PO to PO. Is that not a tradable contract?
I think it reduces his value marginally. Like if if you're trying to get the most tradable thing, you don't want the player on a short deal because the team who's trading for him doesn't want to have to deal with worrying about him in a year. But it's not it's not crushing. It's not like you're signing him to a 17-year contract.
It's not ideal. It's not the front end and the back end. And my point, and we can leave on this, the point is, if you want to win now, and to the points we made of why we value the player option and JK does, and you want a guy that's happy and feels treated fairly, who is a big part of this team, we believe, moving forward, you give him the player option. You're right, Brian. You did lose a little bit of that, trade value. But if it's about the here and now, you give him that, you keep your relationship, and you don't get a perfect deal, but you get a pretty good deal, and he gets to feel respected about what he gets, and we all move on and worry about winning and like he said, helping Steph. And he said this in the meeting with Joe, I'm all in to help Steph. Let's send him out. We should be focusing on winning right now, and I'm fine with that. But again, you have to take a little bit of the hit, Warriors, in terms of you don't have the back end. But if Jake 2 years from now, you want to keep him, you have his bird rights, you treat him good, and you show him, hey, the plan around him, then maybe you keep him. So it's not perfect, but I don't think anybody can get anything they really want. If you ask JK, he wants Jalen Green's deal. He's not getting that. He wants Jalen Johnson deal. You're not getting that. Warriors, we feel like pick front end, number lower, player option. If that number needs to be lower to stay in the second apron, or if it's about really controlling the back end of the deal, move the number up, shake your roster up, and you can have a team option. Or the hybrid model, let him keep his no trade clause.
Well, I would just say one of my big theories, anybody listening to this podcast knows I'm an actions over words guy. I think Mike Dunleavy is doing his job. I think you're doing your job. I think Jonathan did his job because he's getting offered, tens of millions of dollars a year. He did his job to get to this point.
Mhm.
And the actions of the Warriors are the actions of a team that wants to get the player under contract. I don't know if they envision him as a guy that's going to be there in 2030, but their actions are of a player who wants to get him under contract. And your job is to get the best possible. And you're in the middle of the fight. And I appreciate you opening this window and letting us know the way you're thinking. And we'll see how it goes. But I think at the end of this, I really do believe everybody's going to be able to feel good about it. And I say that I've seen restricted free agencies end where that's not the case.
Mhm.
I feel like this is going to be there. And you can say to me, yeah, but I wouldn't disagree with you.
Brian loves happy endings. The movie, and I should. Sorry, can we cut that out?
Thanks, Slater. No, don't cut it. I want you to leave it in. It's fine.
Brian loves movies with rosy finishes. There you go.
This can work. I think the biggest thing, though, and Slater touched on this the other day, I think it is important when you have a player this important as JK to feel good about the business so that the basketball can be the focus. If the winning didn't matter and it was like, hey, whatever, then I would agree that, how he feels is probably pretty irrelevant. But I think, he's pretty important. They won't let him go. And if you're going to tell somebody your contract's over with us and you have a team that wants to give you $100 million or so and a player option and a starting role, but we're not going to let you go and we're not going to give you a great deal. We're going to give you the deal we can take advantage of. Don't ask I wouldn't ask somebody to necessarily be happy about that. I know I personally wouldn't really be very happy about that.
Okay, Aaron, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you to Slater for being here and setting this up. Thank you to our producer, Jackson, and thank you for listening and watching to this unique edition of the Hoop Collective. We will talk to you soon.